a himbo movie. Dumb as hell, so beautiful that I didn't care. It's accidental fascist apologia, and I'll probably see it twice. That might be the strangest movie review I've ever read. Gladiator is an incredibly well-liked and popular movie.
My name is Maximus Decimus Meridius, father to a murdered son, husband to a murdered wife, and I will have my vengeance.
The sequel won't be. Despite getting a 72% critic rating, or 61% from top critics, to get fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, you only need above a 5. And I think it just comes down to how you rate a movie. This is a competently put together film. It does actually look how I'd expect Rome to look. Unlike some movies, you can tell that they spent some money on it, albeit not $310 million. Seems a little bit extreme at the best of times. And this isn't a movie that seems to actively set out to hate its own audience or something, just actually quite rare nowadays. No, the problems with the movie are everything else. And whereas I think some people will go, well, it's competently put together, so it starts at a 4 or a 5, I judge a movie by how much I enjoyed it. And I didn't. In fact, I liked the first scene of the movie, where they have a battle in a castle, is the only compliment I can give it. Why when I see things like bigger, louder, and longer than the original film, and then you only give it a 2.5 out of 5, I'm like, oh, is that really fresh? For fans of the original, the nostalgic callbacks and epic set pieces may be enough to satisfy, even if this sequel rarely achieves the soul-stirring impact of the predecessor. Does that sound fresh? Does that actually sound like a 7 out of 10? This movie definitely hinges on nostalgia. It's all over the place. The problem is, it makes you feel nothing.
Belong to Maximus. Now I give it to you.
Because this movie isn't tied to the first one at all. In fact, it actively craps on the legacy of the first one, because whereas he died trying to improve Rome, they start this by going, nah, it didn't happen. No, actually, Rome is a cesspool. This Rome is like if Portland just went out and started trying to conquer the world. And the interesting thing is how similar some of the positive and then negative reviews are. The sequel doesn't have the soul-stirring impact of the predecessor. Most dismayingly, the grand emotional sweep of the first film is nowhere to be found. Epic in length and spectacle, but not in feeling. A review that I entirely agree with. One of the issues is the actors are awful. The problem is the script is also crap. The casting is bizarre in various places. And the characters and their motivations are almost like they were thought of independently and then fit together into a movie without any consideration how they're meant to impact each other, or even how that impacts the story. And for me, that's the worst part of the film, even beyond major characters' inability to emote.
I remember that day. I never forgot it.
We'll get back to that. First of all, the characters seem to have been set up as various different stereotypes. For instance, you have this one talking about the evil wit of Denzel Washington. The problem is, there was no evil wit. This is basically a guy whose entire plan can be summarized as, I'm just going to get someone into gambling debt, and then the rest just kind of coincidentally happens. Killing some people at the end isn't evil wit, and finding out the information he did was luck. He didn't know that the guy he got into gambling debt had any of this information at all. They didn't even know that a plan was going on that he needed to get information about.
Because this is what they believe in. Power.
And his entire motivation as a character for doing all of this and tearing down Rome is just, I don't like Rome for what they did to me. It's like, okay, that doesn't really make you a hero or a villain, and that's a problem. Because you have that same problem for every single character in the entire movie. Because you have the main character, Lucius, son of Maximus, and afflicted with a horrible medical condition, which means that he just has no facial expressions or ability to intonate with his voice.
I remember that day. I never forgot it. That a slave could take revenge against an emperor. I never knew a mother nor a father.
In fact, all of his lines are delivered exactly like this. We saw so in the trailer, and every single line is delivered in the same way. This wasn't just a trailer way of speaking. This is him the entire movie. His character's main use in the movie is to put the audience to sleep, or make them fall asleep. I mean, putting them to sleep. He's not going around the cinemas injecting people in the neck. Although, at least if that was going on, the running away from him in the cinema would be more entertaining than the movie itself. The problem is, this guy is so stupid he takes his wife into battle with him. Only woman in the entire army in the first scene. The one battle I actually liked. But as the only woman in the entire city defense, she does stand out a bit, which is doubled down on when the enemy general arrives and go, you need to kill her! Specifically. Points to her and everything. Pedro Pascal, huge misogynist, which is basically the only compliment I can give him in the movie. But of course, she had to die because we had to fridge her so that Lucius, the main character, has a reason to do basically anything in the movie. Although, even that is quickly undercut by other characters. This is a running trend. Either way, the Roman general takes the city, captures Lucius, and ships him back to the gladiatorial arena. And his motivation is now, I'm going to fight in the arena because that way you'll give me the general's head and I can take vengeance because he killed my wife, even though she was trying to shoot him in the face at the time. We're already in some weird back and forth because she tried to kill him, but she only tried to kill him because he's invading the city where she is. But why did they decide to invade that place in the first place? Who knows? Did they deserve it? We'll never find out. Either way, you do have the good setup for the story. All it needs is the general for Rome, Pedro Pascal, to be evil. He needs to be a villain. He needs to go around and start just wiping out people at random in the city. That way you can hate him and want the main protagonist to go out and take vengeance. That doesn't happen. You see, Pedro Pascal, I don't know if he had it in his contract that he can't be evil, but they decide to destroy the movie so he isn't. This is a military general who is just upset and teary that he has to go to war.
Rome has so many subjects, she must feed them.
They can eat war!
How do we end up in a movie about killing people where the villain hates killing people? I don't understand. No, he is simultaneously a villain going around and oppressing people, while also being oppressed by his boss. No, he's sympathetic because his wife is held by the emperors, and they're using her to force him to go and be evil. This means he's actually sympathetic, and so now the hero is trying to kill somebody who doesn't really deserve it. So now you're not rooting for the main character, and the only way the story could be saved is that the emperors are also evil, so hopefully they get taken down. That doesn't happen either. The two emperors are some weird camp nutcases. One of the only times they ever do anything remotely evil is when two gladiators fight and they're like, to the death. The problem is, these people aren't really evil, they're more just incompetent and mentally ill. You can't even really root for everyone to wipe them out because they're just annoying. Really effeminate leaders where you're like, well, you should have just removed them. It was stupid to put them in power in the first place. They're clearly not capable of leading, so it's obviously degenerated, but it's not as if they seem to do it deliberately. And get to a point where if you're like, well, if they are mentally ill, is it even their fault? I mean, one of them thinks that a monkey should lead the empire. It does, briefly.
There are victories yet still to come.
And so you combine all of that with the evil wit of Denzel Washington, whose main motivation is, I was oppressed as a slave, and so now I want to rise up on the ranks and take vengeance upon the empire that did it to me. And like, well, it's probably got a point there as well. And I don't know if you've noticed the problem with all these characters. There isn't really a villain. Everybody is going after someone else, and that person is sympathetic in some way. And then you get right to the top of the emperors, and you're like, well, they're just incompetent, really. This seems more like an administrative issue, to be honest. That's one of the reasons that there is no feeling. There's spectacle, people are going around doing things, but you never really know why, or care why. If the main character does get the head of the general that killed his wife, you're like, well, he didn't even really want to do it. Is that satisfying? If you take the heads of the emperors and they're just kind of incompetent, is an incompetent villain dying satisfying? No, actually. They thought of all these characters and they all wanted them to be nuanced, which basically means written badly, and then never seemed to think how they would interplay, think how they would undercut the emotional story of all the other characters. You needed the hero to go after the villain. Stories aren't that complicated, but they seem to be for these people. And so I'm not surprised with a weak, inconsequential film. For fans of the original, it's more of the it isn't more of the same. It's like a 3-year-old tried to imitate the first one. For everyone else, it's all Denzel and Little Al. He's basically the only person that can act in the entire movie. In fact, there's one casting decision that just bewildered me. In the Colosseum, there's an announcer that comes out and starts to announce the battles. The person that you don't cast for this is someone from Little Britain.
Anyway, listen, I better go. I've got my fat people here. Our buzzword for today is cravings.
This guy can't help it. In every role he does, it's sort of this wacky, weird comedy style. It doesn't fit in the center of Rome. That's why the emperors don't work. This is a movie that's supposed to be a serious piece about people dying to take vengeance for their dead wife, and then Matt Lucas pops up.
I want to go on the big one.
Maybe you should finish your candy floss first.
Darling.
You're watching the film, half expecting someone to say, computer says no.
Computer says no.
The film is mostly violent déjà vu, selling moviegoers the same story it peddled nearly a quarter century ago, except this one's mentally deficient. At the start, the story does move at quite a pace, and then you kind of hit the gladiatorial arena, and then it stops. When things happen, they happen very fast for seemingly nonsensical reasons. There's so much waffle in between the moments, though, and the fights that are in the arena aren't satisfying at all. If I told you that somebody defeated a rhino by throwing a bit of sand in the air, you'd probably think I was stupid. I thought they were stupid for doing it. I don't know if they're aware, but rhinos do have object permanence. It can remember where the pissing wall is, and just throwing smoke in the air doesn't mean it's just gonna run forever. If anything, the rhino would be smarter than the people that wrote this crap. And there are so many problems with the battle scenes. It has demonic monkeys, for some reason, that are all CGI'd and look abysmal. This is the same with any CGI used in the movie. But there's also a scene where they flood the Colosseum and have a ship battle. And like, well, the Colosseum isn't that big, so yeah, you can move the ships around, but the first one to ram wins. But when one side is like heavily armed with archers and you're not, so they're trying to get away from you and you just kind of want to close the distance so you can use your swords, all you do is ram. And they're going to. There is a scene where they're literally about to ram the people, and then for absolutely no reason whatsoever, he stops, turns the ship, and cuts all their oars off the side of the ship. I mean, I'm sure this is a really impressive tactic, but it doesn't work as well as just pissing ramming them. It's not as if they were going to escape from you. If he hadn't turned, he would have rammed them in the first place. I'm like, okay, but Disp, you seem a bit obsessed with them ramming them. I'm like, yeah, because when they cut off the oars off, what's the next thing they do? Turn around and pissing ram them. If all they want to do is ram the ship, why did you turn away in the first place, you pissing lunatics?
But that seems like a really small detail.
Yes, it is. But the rest of the movie is so boring that little details like that are the only thing you can cling on to give your brain some mental stimulation.
Here's to questionable choices.
Like if you're going to lead a revolution against the emperors and you're walking along the street with all of your hoods up. When you walk into an ambush, how does every single person get shot except the one guy they want alive when they don't know who he is? Magic. That's how. Crafted with care and ambition. Only to create like the sets and the armors. It doesn't include the script. And the script admits it. There are multiple times where people are about to give a big rousing speech, only to start the speech with, well, I'm not an orator. So, well, maybe you pissing should be. It's almost like the scriptwriter is announcing in advance, it's like, look, I know this is crap, but I've given the character a reason for him to talk crap. So it's not my fault. I'm actually just getting into the spirit of the character. It's not incompetence, it's deep, meaningful art, you see. Gladiator 2 is absurd, stale, and sadly, not a little bit pathetic in this day and age. Couldn't have put it better myself. Scott is skilled enough to turn what amounts to the same script you'd have seen in a direct-to-DVD sequel in 2005 into something that looks expensive and professional, although he's no longer at the point where he can make it sing. In other words, he used to be able to take crap and kind of convince you it was good. Now it's starting to smell. The only thing that Ridley Scott has left in his armory to try and make you feel something in this pathetic piece is music and nostalgia. I'm sure the end will get some people where, at the culmination of a nonsensical piece of plot, everyone starts to cheer and they're like, "Rah!" and the music kicks off and like, this feels immense, until you think about what's just happened and then realize that it doesn't deserve any of this. The music is just an emotional trick to move your feelings from the first movie onto this one. It feels impressive, but it doesn't deserve it.
This carpet is a person with feelings.
That's like the final fight. There's a moment where Lucius is underwater and the guy above him is just stabbing him repeatedly with the sword, and he can't see him because the water's a mess. But the camera cuts underwater and you see his breastplate, the one that Maximus used in the first film, hasn't aged or been damaged in any way, shape or form, is protecting him for all of these sword hits like it's made out of metal, even though it's leather. It wouldn't work like this. There's plenty of hints in the movie of the supernatural, the spiritual realm, souls being transported across the water to the afterlife. And I think this moment is meant to be Maximus, who's like infused himself within the armor, protecting him. And I'm sure when they wrote it, it felt big and impressive. And really, it just seems like a desperate hope that nostalgia can carry the what on earth is happening right now sense of the rest of the film. Largely because you don't care about any of these characters. Half because of the acting, half because of the script, and half because the rest of them are undercutting everybody else. And like, that's too many halves. Yes. But when half the movie doesn't make any sense, I don't know why my math should either. Don't go to Ridley Scott's sequel for historical accuracy. It's very true. I watched a lot of the movie thinking that'll piss Shazzaversity off. I was right. Although that wasn't really a big issue for me, largely because I don't know anything about it, and I enjoyed the first battle, which even not knowing that much about military tactics is rather absurd. It's fun though, so I'll let him off. I was entranced by the performance. I don't believe you. This has truly abysmal acting in it.
That a slave could take revenge against an emperor. I never knew a mother nor a father.
That's why Denzel Washington was sort of the one saving grace, because yes, I mean, he was just acting the same way that Denzel Washington always acts, but at least that is acting and he can actually emote. As long as you like sensory overload, there's enough enough here to have a good time. Just don't think too hard about it. I don't think she's realized that that basically insults all the positive reviewers. Turn your brain off, don't think about it, it'll be fine. You're not supposed to take that seriously. I'm taking the piss. It's not supposed to be one of your principles in life.
I've just turned my brain off. It's fine.
Not even its excessively violent action sequences, beautiful cinematography, and masterful set and costume design can save the sequel from how boring it is. Exactly. There's a lot of people that did a lot of good work on this movie. It just wasn't the actors or the scriptwriters. Pretty integral parts of a movie. You think we'd get something more than a rehash of the first film. A lot of people are calling this a rehash of the first film. I don't really see it. The only way I could see this as a rehash of the first film is if you took its corpse and then ran it through a blender, poured petrol on it, and then set fire to it, and then got someone who's mentally deficient to try and reassemble it from the ashes. It's like, yeah, technically it may be made of the same material, but that's about where the resemblance ends. There are bad movies which are entertaining and bad movies which are a drag. The truth is, this is both. A pale imitator. The visual splendors sometimes exceed the indelible visions of the first film. No, not talking about the plot, though. No, it looks good. My complaint isn't so much this one doesn't reach the same heights as the first, but the drop-off is so steep, it signals a lack of ambition that comes across almost cynical. It could be seen as, that'll do. It's Gladiator. They're going to go and watch it. We're not going to make a Gladiator 3 anyway. So we don't really need to put anything in it. We just get the component parts of a movie, put them together, and just ship it out there for $310 million somehow. The dialogue can be uttered with a straight face. I think that's just because they can't actually act and emote. They only have one expression, which is just like this. The entire movie. The movie lacks is a reason to be. Yeah, because all the characters undercut the motivations of everybody else. And there is no story to do because there's no one to support. Then there's no one to root against. Even the Emperors, you're not like, yeah, you get what you deserve. It's just a himbo movie. Dumb as hell. So beautiful that I didn't care. It's accidental fascist apologia, and I'll probably see it twice. That might be the strangest movie review I've ever read. I can only assume he really likes half-undressed gladiators sweating. I don't know what that's referring to, or why that would make him want to see it twice. He's like, this is based. If Denzel Washington wasn't in this movie, it would be a particularly forgettable film. And even with him in it, it still is. But the strangest thing about that review, this is a forgettable film. Fresh. 7.5 out of 10. This would be a really pathetic film. It's really good, though. I don't understand what you're doing, folks. This guy called it fascist apologia and gave it an A-. I'm bewildered. I was not jazzed to see a Gladiator 2. So was I pleasantly surprised? Sure. Fresh. I think I liked it. Fresh. I'm not sure that you can be a professional critic when you struggle so much to have an opinion. I have a stronger opinion on the Gladiator boss's name than this, which I have to be honest, when I saw it was Raw Don Glover, aka Raw Don Glover, that gave me more entertainment than all of Gladiator 2 combined. Like, he doesn't just like the dong, he loves it, but only when it's raw. I mean, why are you talking about Jack? This is about I know. It's just that when you start talking about Gladiator 2, the brain sort of swerves away from the topic at any opportunity. Gladiator 2 is saddled by callbacks that weigh it down into a soapy drama. Fresh. Don't expect to dwell on this long after it ends. Fresh. Gladiator 2 is shockingly boring for a purported sword and sandals epic. This film felt like an eternity. I got the feeling I could have a full night's sleep in the movie, wake up and it'd still be going on. Scott strikes on both hewing too closely to the source material, towing the line between drama and comedy. Gladiator isn't supposed to be a comedy. I don't even think this was supposed to be funny. I think that some people in Hollywood just think that camp weirdos are somehow artistic, when everyone else just looks at it and like, no, that's so fringe, it's quite hilarious. What a bizarre weirdo.
Well, Gladiator 2 does fall short in many ways. Yes,
we are still entertained. But she sat up all night thinking of that one. So did everybody else. The amount of times I've seen that joke in these reviews, I tell you. The very best and worst of Ridley Scott is on display here. Sways too much into tedious and bland rather than poignant and audacious. Okay, so where was the very best? You very accurately described his worst. Not too much of the compliments, though. There's no slack to the yak. Right. I'm guessing that's a Chicago thing. An inadvertent comical miscalculation. Easily the dumbest, detail challenged sword and sandal release of the century. I loved every battle sequence, but there aren't enough of them to justify the 2.5 hours running time or the endless hours empty chatter. Exactly how I felt. Gladiator 2's biggest failures are the absence of depth and gravitas. Scott's increasingly leaden direction can't add any nuance. Instead, sloppily lumps together the po-faced grandeur of Quo Vadis and the unhinged debauchery of Caligula. This movie, at best, is mid, according to most of the reviews. I thought it was far, far worse than that. I was bored very early on. At best, the first third, I could be like, okay, maybe there's something there. And everything after that I thought was awful. If I was being more honest, I'd say everything after the first battle sequence. If you liked the first one, you'll struggle to like this. If you hated the first one, I don't even know why you care. This doesn't just not only live up to that, it's a pale imitation. Lacking any kind of emotional depth, any kind of acting, script writing is awful. And while it is a competently put together thing, and you're like, well, okay, this is a movie, which you can't even take for granted nowadays, this will leave no lasting impression except, I really wish I hadn't paid for that. I'm not gonna get those hours back. And for me, someone who marks a movie not because it was competently put together or because I liked or disliked the CGI, but simply based on how entertained I was throughout it, how much did it keep me occupied, and how much enjoyment did I get from it, I would give it an incredibly low score. As my main dominant feeling throughout the movie was just, I'm so very bored. But those are just my thoughts. What are yours? Let me know down in the comments below. Like the video if you like the video. Subscribe. More videos like this in the future. I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.